I am a ghost story fanatic. My entire career in Hollywood was set when the movie The Ring came out, and I went and saw it, and I said, oh boy, this is so good. They're going to be making PG-13 ghost stories, and that's basically my wheelhouse because I don't like horror. I don't like shows that scare you or disgust you by showing you ugly things. What I like is that sense of the uncanny, that sense that out of the corner of your eye, you see something that should not be there, and it changes your whole perspective. And there's a sort of chill that goes up your spine when that happens. And that's the thing that I think is terrific. And C.S. Lewis said at one point that stories like that, he cited Edgar Allan Poe, stories like that are a sign that death is uncanny, that death should not be there. And he said there's a reason those stories are so popular and so good. And I really do love them. So I just it's Halloween, it's October season. So I wanted to give you some of my favorite ghost stories in that kind of milieu, that kind of subtle, eerie, creepy thing that's not dependent on shocks and blood and boo scares, all of which I detest. So best collection of ghost stories, Oxford Book of English Ghost Stories. Great selection, little offbeat, but great selection of authors. And if you look up some of the authors' other works in that story, you'll find some great ghost stories as well. And an honorable mention to Roald Dahl's Book of Ghost Stories, which has just 10 ghost stories that he picked that are great. Best ghost stories that you'll find. Obviously, there are no best, but these are some that I just think are terrific. The Monkey's Paw. You've got to read The Monkey's Paw, even though you probably have seen some version in it. It's been filmed. It's been plays. It's been operas. It's been comic books and everything. It's just been adapted a lot. 1902 by W.W. Jacobs, The Monkey's Paw. But it's a short, beautifully written story that creates an entire social milieu before it gives you one of the great, really creepy stories of all time. M.R. James, who is regarded as the great master of the Edwardian ghost story, he wrote a story called Lost Hearts you want to look at, which is terrific, about an orphan who is adopted by an old man and starts to believe there have been other orphans who were adopted by him before who aren't around anymore. There is a good version of that made by the BBC. They had a series called Ghost Stories for Christmas, which was just about, it was like dying and going to heaven when I was in England and I would see Ghost Stories for Christmas. But read the story, it's great. E.F. Benson, another great ghost story writer, wrote The Bus Conductor, which is so famous that you will have heard it as an urban folk legend, but it's still great in its original form. He actually made it up. There is a modern guy. Oh, and Edgar Allan Poe, everybody, The Fall of the House of Usher is one of the greatest stories of all time. So I won't say anything about it, but he did a sort of proto version of that called Ligeia, which is also terrific, and those are worth looking at. Robert Aikman is a modern master, often overlooked, and he has a story called Ringing the Changes, which I think is in the Roald Dahl collection, which is about a honeymooning couple who come to a seaside town where the bells are ringing and it's driving everybody insane. And they just keep ringing and ringing and ringing and ringing. And then suddenly they stop. And what happens then is the story, so I won't give it away. But Robert Aikman's Ringing the Changes, absolutely terrific. Elizabeth Bowen, women and gay people have made tremendous contributions to the ghost story. So I want to mention at least one, which was The Demon Lover by Elizabeth Bowen, who I believe is also a very talented poet. And of course, Children of the Corn by Stephen King. Do not watch the movie. The movie sucks. And by the way, most great ghost stories are short stories. That is, for some reason, the form in which they thrive. There are some great ghost story movies and novels, but Stephen King's Children of the Corn is as spooky as it's possible to get. He is definitely a master when he does it, which is not all the time. Best movies, The Haunting, and you have to watch the original, the 1963. It is based on Shirley Jackson's classic ghost novel, The Haunting of Hill House. I think Shirley Jackson's best spooky novel is We Have Always Lived in the Castle, but the movie of The Haunting is great. I'll just play you one brief scene. Julie Harris, one of the great actresses, plays this sexually repressed woman who is sleeping in a bedroom with a lesbian, and they're in bed together, and they start to hear voices, and Julie Harris reaches out and starts clutching this girl's hand in the dark as she's listening to these voices. And here's just a brief clip of that scene, cut 15.
I will take a lot from this this filthy house for his sake, but I will not go along with hurting a child. No, I will not. I will get my mouth to open right now, and I will yell, I will yell, I will yell. Stop it! What? What? No, what? Whose hand was I holding?
That's what I mean. That is just a creepy scene. It's dark. She's holding onto this woman's hand. She wakes up. Their beds have been pushed apart somehow. And whose hand was she holding? And that's the kind of stuff I just absolutely love. Paranormal Activity, the movie, has a great scene like that where they put flour down in the room and they wake up and there are really creepy footprints in the flour. The Innocents is probably the greatest of all ghost story movies. 1961. It's The Turn of the Screw by Henry James, one of the classic ghost stories. It must have been filmed. It's got to have been filmed 5 or 6 times by now, but The Innocents in 1961 is the best with Deborah Carr. It was written by Truman Capote, based on a play by William Archibald, and it also has some extra dialogue by John Mortimer, who wrote the wonderful Rumpole of the Bailey stories, mystery stories, and whose daughter, Emily Mortimer, you've seen in Woody Allen movies, terrific actress. So those are the best ghost movies, I think. The best ghost novel is probably The Shining. I think that King just knocked it out of the park on that one. As much as I like The Haunting of Hill House and some other ghost novels, there are some great ghost novels, but the novel is hard to maintain. And because King is such a master storyteller and such a master with effects, I think The Shining is actually as good as booked, and I think it's much better than the movie. The movie is kind of a classic in certain ways, but the book is just scarier. And I think, I always believe that a writer should do his job. So you can read one of my books and say, wow, that's more than a thriller. And that's great. I think that I hope there are more things in my books than thrills. But if there aren't thrills, then I'm not doing my job. I'm there to thrill or to intrigue, give you intrigue or something like that. So King he delivers. Yes, he puts it, he shows you the bear, he shows you the ghost, and he makes it work. And nobody writes scarier stuff than he does. And The Shining is terrific. Best scary video game, I have to go with the original Silent Hill. I think it was the atmosphere of Silent Hill was just unbelievable. And being in that town, walking through that town in the fog and knowing something could come out at you and the creepiness of it, they never really have matched that. The third, the zombie ones, those were good. I like them, but there's something about Silent Hill that just had a ghost story, and zombies are not the same thing as ghosts. They're too bloody and all of that. So that's some great, I will tell you, that is great, spooky, eerie, Halloween reading that I think, you will thank me for pointing you to these things. This is real stuff that I like, and just so much different and better and long-lasting than shocks and blood, which shock you for a moment, may give you nightmares, but doesn't really give you that little chill down the spine that life is not what you think it was. And the thing about that is, it's true. Life is not what we think it is. It's not just everything that we see and feel. It's something much stranger and more uncanny than that. For more great stuff, like and subscribe. And for even more great stuff, like and subscribe to The Andrew Klavan Show wherever you get your podcasts.